Ahoy! Let's have a look at the item changes for the September 12th update. Starting with weapons, the first change we have is Headshot Booster, the bonus damage being reduced from 45 to 40. Very strong item overall for early pressure, so I think this nerf is fair. High Velocity Mag, also very strong, has its weapon damage reduced from plus 14 to plus 12. I believe this is still a very strong pickup and I could see further nerfs for this in the future. Restorative Shot has its healing on heroes increased from 35 to 40, and along with that has its healing from troopers increased from 10 to 15. I think this is an incredibly strong sustain item. I mean, the healing pretty much matches the headshot booster damage at this point, and I think I will pick it up even more than I already am, because it's just very good in terms of early sustain, while still giving you some pressure and some damage. Hollow Point Ward's additional bonus damage for being above 6% health is increased from 20 to 22%. Don't think that'll be all too significant. Rapid Round's bonus fire rate has been reduced from 12 to 9%, but it no longer provides minus 50 health, which I think will give this item a lot more general value without risking your safety in return for characters that particularly benefit from fire rate early on, though I personally prefer other perks and looking towards fire rate with other items later instead. Active Reload has its lifesteal reduced from 22 to 20% during the effect, not very relevant. Mystic Shot gets a massive nerf. The spirit damage now considers bullet falloff, which means you can no longer use it to effectively long-range poke. We may have to thank Mikael S for this one. He was kind of getting this very early in the tournament in order to pressure enemies and get long-range poke, so that's no longer gonna be as easy. Unfortunate for those of us that are not as good at aiming, because this was a very nice bonus way to get some damage in even at a distance. In return, the cooldown is reduced to 5.2 seconds instead of 6, but I think the fall-off loss is going to be bigger than this buff it gets in return. Berserker's bullet resist is reduced from 8 to 7%. The long-range bullet shield is increased from 90 to 140, quite a significant shield for an otherwise damage-focused item. Melee charge almost gets a bit of an overhaul here, so I'm just going to tell you what it does now. By default, it provides 15% weapon damage, 100 bonus health, 1 health regen, and 40% heavy melee distance. And then on top of that, it has a passive that comes with an 8.5 seconds cooldown and gives your next melee attack 20% bonus damage on a heavy attack specifically, and also reloads your weapon instantly. The Soul Shredder bullet's weapon damage is increased by 1% to 7%. The Fleetfoot active move speed is reduced from 4 to 3. The cooldown is reduced from 22 to 19 seconds, and the health is increased from 75 to 90. I think making the movement speed a little bit weaker here is fair enough, because it makes you incredibly fast early in the game especially. Warpstone has its range decreased from 13 to 11 meters. I'll show you what this looks like here. So it is kind of more a very short hop at this point. It's just a very quick gap closer, not quite the distance traveled that you had before on this. Heroic Aura's active movement speed has also been reduced from 3 to 2. I think this was extremely strong in late game, especially with group pushes, just boosting everyone, so I think this reduction also very fair. Burst Fire now also provides plus 70 bonus health, not super relevant at the point of the game where you usually get it. Sharpshooter's bullet shield health is increased from 175 to 200. Hunter's Aura's bullet resist reduction is decreased by 1% down to 9. Titanic Magazine's bullet resist is increased from 15 to 18%. Akameka Fire's spirit power is increased from 7 to 11. The Crippling Headshot debuff that reduces bullet resist and spirit resist has been decreased from 5 seconds to 4 seconds duration. Lucky Shot's bonus damage that can proc has been increased from 80 to 90%. This one surprised me. Glass Cannon's max stacks were buffed from 5 to 7, so even more damage increase. The weapon damage on Silencer has been increased from 15 to 20%, making it a little less purely utility focused. Frenzy's change says the linger duration has been increased from 4 to 6 seconds. I'm guessing this linger duration may refer to a duration once you're above the threshold again. In the Vitality section, Healing Rite now grants +3 Spirit Power, so it's not quite left out in that regard, and it also upgrades into Health Nova now instead. Enduring Spirits, Spirit Lifesteal is increased from 8 to 10%. I think that's a good change, even though it's still not going to make a massive difference. The melee damage increase on melee Lifesteal is reduced from 15 to 13%. Again, not massive. Health Nova now requires Healing Rite, as I said already, and also now grants +4 Spirit Power. The range, however, has been reduced from 18 to 15. It was just a little bit too effective in many situations. Divine Barriers, Spirit and Bullet Shield are reduced from 300 to 260. I believe it is fairly difficult to use this item effectively, but maybe the high MMR play had a major impact on this balancing decision. Rescue Beam gets hit quite hard. The heal is reduced from 30% to 26%. Additionally, the cast range is reduced from 45 meters to 36 meters. But in return, it no longer requires Healing Rite, which effectively also means it's cheaper. So in a way, you're also getting a buff here, and I think this could be quite interesting as a mid-game option now. Lane Troopers no longer reset the regeneration of Fortitude. The melee damage of Light Strike is reduced from 40 to 35%, so melee getting hit here once again. The cooldown of Majestic Leap is reduced from 24 seconds to 22 seconds, but because of the global increase it's 23 seconds anyway, so barely worth mentioning. Similarly, Metal Skin goes from 22 seconds to 21. Inhibitor's damage reduction on bullets was not working properly, that's been fixed. Colossus movement and dash speed reduction has been increased from 10 meters to 12 meters radius, and the cooldown has been reduced from 45 seconds to 37 seconds. Phantom Strike's damage has been reduced from 150 to 75, and the Spirit Power scaling has been reduced from 2 to 1. That item was just too oppressive lately. It's been in so many different builds and playstyles because it was just so good. So this makes a lot of sense, and I don't think this is going to make it entirely useless because it still applies a disarm is slow, deals damage, and teleports you at the same time, so it's still a very good setup for certain heroes. Soul Rebirth no longer grants plus 20% weapon damage, and the cooldown reduction is reduced from 18% to 15%. Unstoppable not applying the disarm properly has been fixed. Moving on to spirit items, Spirit Strike sees some very significant nerfs, like the other melee items too, but probably the heaviest hits here. The melee damage is reduced from 15 to 12%. The debuff duration is reduced from 13 to 11 seconds. Keep in mind that is still longer than the cooldown. The Spirit Shield is reduced from 100 to 80, and the regen is reduced from 1 to 0.8. I don't think that's going to make it unviable. I think the bonus damage as well as the Spirit Resist reduction will always have value, but it will just nerf melee builds in general a bit. Mystic Reach Spirit Resist is increased from 5 to 6%, and the ability range is increased from 15 to 16%. Extra Spirit Power is increased from 8 to 9. Ammo Scavenger gets a buff, which I really did not expect. Neutral kills now count as soul capture. So in other words, all jungle camps are now included, meaning it's going to be even harder to lose the stacks, and they were already pretty hard to lose unless you died. On top of that, the buff duration is now increased from 35 to 40 seconds. Again, even harder to lose the stacks. As I said before, in my opinion, this item is really slept on. It's really, really effective, gives you so much spirit power so easily, and less chances to lose it in any way. Now, even if you get pushed out of lane completely, you can get your stacks or keep your stacks up by killing a single tier 1 jungle creep, a single neutral creep. In the tier 2s, Withering Whip has its fire rate slow increased from 30 to 40%. Slowing Hex projectile speed has been increased by 20%, so it flies a little bit quicker now. Quicksilver Reload has its damage increased from 50 to 65, that's the one that gets applied with your ability. Surge of Power now gets an additional buff, providing you with a 10% extra fire rate bonus after the ability that you imbued is used, on top of the movement speed increase. Rapid Recharge now gains plus 12% weapon damage on top of its current stats. The mention here, tier 1 extra charge gets 6%. Improved Burst max health bonus damage is reduced from 10% to 9%. Improved Reach Spirit Power is increased from 6 to 8. Torment Pulse health is increased from 125 to 140. Silence Glyph Spirit Shield is reduced from 200 to 150. Fair enough, I think this was a bit too much shield for an item that's otherwise very strong already. And on the last tier, Echo Shard's bonus spirit power is increased from 8 to 12. These are all the item changes. If you're interested in the hero changes as well, that should be linked somewhere here. And other than that, if you enjoyed this video and want to see more Deadlock, consider subscribing and clicking the bell. Thanks to my patrons for supporting this video, and thank you for watching. Duke Sloth, out.